Welcome back, Holotable Heroes, to another Galaxy of Heroes video. I'm your boy Scribble, and today we're going to be discussing all things data disks for this latest edition of Conquest so that you can get your red box as easily as possible. Without further ado, let's break things down.
So give it up.
My dead body.
And here are the data disks that you can start earning in this particular version of Conquest starting tomorrow. There are a couple of sets here that I feel like will make the path through this Conquest incredibly easy. Now, as you know, guys, I am very much a supporter of the fact that we need to be earning these red boxes in Conquest every single time because it helps us keep on top of the meta. Well, not necessarily on top, but at least keeps us aligned with the meta so we're not always chasing our own tails. This particular Conquest is of particular importance simply because it is the start of a brand new fleet meta that is going to push aside the likes of the Profundity, push aside the likes of the Executor, and probably deal with those pesky Empire fleets that have been dominating the arenas recently. So, we know that the TIE Interceptor, Fury class Interceptor, Malgus's ship that we get to win from this Conquest is going to be forming part of that new meta fleet for the Leviathan under Darth Revan. We need to be able to use this ship not only in the actual Leviathan fleet, but also to unlock the Leviathan in the first place. So it has never been more important, in my opinion, to Redbox Conquest. Okay? Redbox in Conquest is going to let you get that character as soon as possible. Fleet metas are so important to keep a track of, not just because they help us win GAC, which means crystals, which means more passive income, but it also helps you stay on top of your fleet arena shards and helps you get those 400 crystals a day that we can earn there. So important to keep the progression of your roster flowing nicely. So let's take a look at some of these data disks that we're getting. We have lost the Zealous Ambition setup, which is very useful in the prior set of Conquests to get our feats done. However, there are a bunch of solutions here that are still very powerful. First, I'd just like to go down the list and point out some good and bad ones. Potency calibration, ignore it if you see it, unless you have no other choice. Stacking potency has got some niche uses, especially with like a Boba Fett lead, but honestly, not worth it compared to some of the other data disks. Thermal Exhaust, incredibly powerful data disk, this one. Whenever you apply a certain number of debuffs to an enemy, they will gain a certain number of thermal detonators depending on the rarity of the data disk that you're using. Thermal detonators, of course, do max health damage. The only thing that I would say is wrong with the thermal detonators or the thermal exhaust data disks is that they will kill the enemy and it won't count towards your own feats. We know we need to get kills with Sia Junda or Cal Kestis, for example. If they die by thermal exhausts, you will not gain the feat reward for that. Caustic Emissions coming up next then. Caustic Emissions, incredibly powerful once again. This one is so powerful because it is a 1-dot data disk, so you can stack up loads of these bad boys. So, what does Caustic Emissions do? At the start of the enemy's turn, they are going to be gaining stacks of damage over time, or if you get to the third tier, the epic tier, they will also gain burning. Now, being able to put 2 damage over times and a burning on every single time the enemy starts a turn might not sound that powerful, but it is when you combine them. Having multiple stacks of these means you can actually get the enemy to start with a ridiculous level of damage over times, which will then pair with another data disk that we'll see down the line. Now, Amplify Agony is the golden child. If there is any data disk that you want to find in this particular round of Conquest, it is Amplify Agony, particularly at the higher tiers, but even at the lower tiers, it will still do incredible work for you. What does Amplify Agony do? Well, whenever you inflict a debuff to the enemy, they're going to be gaining max health damage. Now that is similar to dots or exposes, for example. And you can stack these Amplify Agonies. They are 2-dot data disks, okay? 2-dot data disks, which means you could probably put 2 or 3 on and pair it with other data disks to deal stupid amounts of damage. So not only will this help with any character that inflicts any kind of debuff do ridiculous damage, but you can also pair it with other data disks to skyrocket the damage of any team that you're going to use. So Amplify Agony, if you see them, take them. Super powerful. Ability Exhaust is also an incredibly useful data disk. It is a 2-dot data disk, and essentially whenever an enemy has got 10 or more debuffs, they actually gain ability block for 1 turn, which is unresistible. Now, the reason this is so powerful is if you pair it with the likes of caustic emissions and thermal exhaust, you can actually have it so that every single turn the enemy is ability blocked. Or I believe you'll need to have 2 or 3 high-level caustic emissions and then a high-level thermal exhaust to trigger 10 debuffs every single turn they take a turn, and then that will also apply ability block to them. Now, I can't tell you how powerful that is. It is just ridiculously powerful, because the enemy will never be able to do anything apart from basic, which is so useful. However, unless you get lucky with the data discs dropping, it can be incredibly difficult to get ability exhaust, high-level burn, high-level caustic emissions, and maybe a high-level thermal detonator or thermal exhaust ability data disc. It can be difficult to make that work. If you can do it, great, it's very useful and it will control the enemy incredibly well. War of Attrition, I'm not a massive fan of this. It is a legendary data disc, so it uses 4 dots out of your 12. Once per turn, whenever a debuff expires on the enemy, all enemies lose 4% turn meter. This effect does not stack, so don't try to get multiple versions of this data disc, it won't do anything. It's not that it's bad, I feel like for 4 dots, it just doesn't give you enough. So I wouldn't say go ham and try to get this one. Protection Recovery, again, gaining a buff recovers your protection. No. It's like, sure, it can be useful. It's not worth wasting slots in your inventory there. Evasive Technique, absolutely not. All allies gain evasion up for 2 turns at the start of their turn. Whenever an ally evades, they gain 30% turn meter. It's not that it's bad, it's just not good enough in my opinion. Unstable Decelerator. This one is actually very useful, particularly if you combine it with Volatile Accelerator. So whenever you deal damage to an enemy, they're going to lose a certain percentage of turn meter based on the rarity of your data disc. Obviously, the rarer the data disc, the more turn meter you're going to be pulling off your enemy. Super useful, particularly if you want to try and farm feats against, say, a nest. Maybe you need to use certain abilities, maybe you need to get, a certain amount of debuffs or buffs depending on the feats in the sector. Being able to reduce the turn meter off the enemy is so powerful. Now, Volatile Accelerator, on the other hand, is like, if we go back and we think about how Amplify Agony is the king of the data discs, well, Volatile Accelerator is our queen here. They go hand in hand so incredibly well. What does it do? Whenever you deal damage to the enemy, you are going to place it can be up to 3 damage overtimes on the enemy, but they're also going to be gaining turn meter. These damage overtimes cannot be resisted, they cannot be evaded. Pair that with Amplify Agony. Putting 3 dots, let's say we've got an epic Volatile Accelerator. Yeah? Putting 3 dots on an enemy every single time you do a basic, that means if you've got a high level Amplify Agony over here, you can be doing up to nearly 25% of their max health damage to them, just off a basic. And that's if you don't have additional debuffs on your ability. Any additional debuffs that you apply on your abilities will also deal more damage. I cannot state how powerful this is. Obviously, they do gain turn meter, so if you do have a Volatile Accelerator, having an Unstable Decelerator combined with it will benefit you quite massively. So Volatile Accelerator, I believe, is a 3-dot data disc. Pair that with at least 1 Amplify Agony and you're already going to be dealing damage. Get 2 or 3 Amplify Agonies under Volatile Accelerator, anything you touch will melt instantly. So we know, for example, that one of the feats at least involves getting kills with Cal Kestis and Seer Junda. Even if they only have level 1, gear 1, you could throw them in with, say, Jedi Master Luke to use his coin ability. Him using the coin ability not only will deal massive damage from the protection-based damage that JML will do with that, but also you're going to be putting on dots, which are then going to be adding additional damage with your Amplify Agony. You don't even need to invest any gear levels in these guys at all if you have that sort of setup going. It will keep you alive, it will help you get those kills super easy, so keep an eye out in particular for Volatile Accelerator and Amplify Agony. They will help you win this without issue. If you throw this in against any team or with any team that you've got that does a lot of debuffs, say like Bad Batch for example, or Inquisitorius for example, Maul Mandos for example, they deal so many debuffs that nothing will last longer than like 10 seconds. You'll take your opening turn and the enemy will just die instantly. So highly recommend Volatile Accelerator and Amplify Agony. If you can pair it with Unstable Decelerator, then do so. It'll help you get all of these feats over here with things like Sia Junda surviving, Cal Kestis surviving, even if you have no gear on them, Sana Staros surviving. You know, you'll be able to get those feats done without any real issue. But those are not the only data disks that we can use to great effect. Another setup that I quite like to use involves actually going with the Ruthless data disks. Now, Ruthless Speed and Ruthless Offense essentially stack your stats or give you turn meter whenever an enemy falls below 100% of their max health. If you pair that with Deadly Catalyst, for example, lets you ignore 30% of the enemy's protection, which means that 30% damage goes directly to the enemy's health, it means you will trigger these thresholds very, very quickly, stacking a significant amount of offense, but only really comes into play if you can find Deadly Catalyst. Now, they do work without them, especially Ruthless Speed. It's very nice to be gaining turn meter across the board whenever the enemy drops below 100% health. And just as an addition to that, if the enemy is recovering health or gaining additional health, then you actually do trigger these thresholds again, and you will stack additional offense or you'll stack additional TM gains. Now, Deadly Catalyst is obviously a very important linchpin, lets you attack under the protection, but also gives you additional tiers at which you're going to be gaining 30% additional offense. If you can't find the other ones, then this is still a very good data disk setup to use. So before we go any further, I just want to take a look at some of these data disks here that I haven't seen, that we haven't talked about yet. Opportunistic Support. Attacking out of turn helps you recover protection or health for defensive formation or opportunistic support. It's not that they're bad, they're just not good enough in my opinion. Master's Technique is actually very useful. Attacking out of turn helps you stack Mastery, which can be so useful. But again, I wouldn't say build your data disk setup around it, it's just useful to have. Blindside, very, very powerful. Whenever you attack out a turn, you put an Expose on the enemy, which can't be resisted. It says it doesn't stack, but Expose does a huge amount of damage, and there are so many abilities in this game that let us attack out a turn that this will help you kill things really quickly. Pair that with Amplify Agony, and Expose does damage twice, essentially. You land the Expose, and it does damage with the Amplify Agony, and then you deal damage to the exposed enemy, additional stacking damage, really useful. And stacking further again, attacking out of turn, gaining 4% offense, really powerful. You can stack your offense incredibly high, so you'll start really clapping cheeks. Let's just go back up just a little bit. Power, gaining additional offense and crit damage, quite useful actually. If you don't get any other data disks, this is still very good to stack your offense off the get-go. Gaining health steal and defense penetration is okay. The insatiable data disks, again, not a key data disk. Vitality, gaining 35% max health and 28% max protection. It's actually really nice. It's really nice, however, it's not as good now that we've lost Zealous Ambition. Voluntary Vanguard is one of the most important data disks in the entire setup. If you can find Voluntary Vanguard, get it. It will essentially make your most powerful or your most healthiest unit taunt or be marked at the start. And it basically gives you a pre-taunt. It basically makes sure that the enemy will always be attacking, say, your GLs, for example. So you can use that, you can abuse it to make sure that your weaker characters don't die when you need to keep Sia or Cal alive or Sana or whatever. So keep an eye out for Voluntary Vanguard. Very, very useful data disk. Honed Skills. Allied attackers gain potency equal to a percentage of their starting potency. I mean, no. Basically, it's okay. I wouldn't focus on it in the slightest. Don't bother. Perseverance. Whenever an ally attacks out a turn, they attack again, limited once per turn. All allied units, the damage you deal is reduced by 30%. Perseverance is actually really good when you combine it with Volatile Accelerator. So being able to double tap and place double amounts of dots on people, because Volatile Accelerator doesn't stack. So this is a pseudo way of getting it to stack. Means that you'll be able to deal a lot of damage with Amplify Agony. So if you do see it, maybe consider getting Perseverance, but honestly, I would probably favor getting more Amplified Agony to really up the damage output than focus on this one in particular. And then you've got Fierce Persistence. Whenever an ally is inflicted with a debuff, they recover 5% health. No. Dark Loyalty. No. I'm just putting it out there right now. Gaining useful... The problem I have with this particular data disk is that it only applies to dark side allies, okay? So immediately you're getting rid of your capability or your usability of your light side roster. If this doesn't apply to half your roster, don't use it. Don't use it. unless you happen to have the Conquest Plus pass and be able to swap out data disks willy-nilly. I wouldn't bother. I would not bother. That one's a trap, guys. Stay away from it. Okay, I think we've spoken enough about data disks today. The key takeaway, ladies and gentlemen, holotable heroes of the wonderful internet, is get Volatile Accelerator, get Amplify Agony. If you cannot, maybe go for a Deadly Catalyst, Ruthless Offense, Ruthless Swiftness setup. Look out for key data disks such as Voluntary Vanguard, and you will be absolutely fine. So, keep an eye out. Tomorrow I will be pushing out videos starting on the Conquest Sector 1 feats, and we will get Sectors 1 through 5 done as quickly as possible with guides on how you can do your feats, even if you do not have particularly powerful teams. Keep an eye out for that, and I will see you all in the very next video. Make sure you like and subscribe to your boy Scribe. Peace out, and may the Force be with you.